Hello, this is the RPGPundit, the final boss and internet shitlords. And I really didn't want to make a video about this topic, but I guess I have to. And it's kind of pissing me off because, so the Woke Grifter crowd has discovered that people from Wisconsin who were game designers in the 1970s, or just peripherally involved in the hobby in the 1970s, somehow are not Pol Pot style Maoists like the Woke Grifters are. And this has driven them into a campaign of extermination. And all of that, what bugs me about it is that it's going to force me to defend nonsense that has been, that is currently being the latest money-making scheme by Gary Gygax's least talented son, Ernie. So here we go. But before I start with that, let me give you guys an update about the Invisible College OSR Occult realist conspiracy role-playing game. It's already, as you knew from if you've watched my previous videos, the Invisible College is now available for purchase. You can get it from Amazon as a 432-page soft cover color book, full color. And you already probably also had heard by now that it was available on ttrpg, but at first it had only been available on PDF. But it is now also available in print on DriveThruRPG in 2 of the 3 versions that we wanted to be there. The 2 that are available right now are the 2 soft covers, the black and white soft cover and the full color soft cover. Again, 432 pages in every case. And of course on DriveThru, what you have is you've got this bundle that you can get for either of the soft covers plus the PDF if you want to have the PDF as well. So that's great. And in spite of this kind of staggered release of the types of product, which has probably hurt Invisible College's standing in the top sellers, new releases list. In spite of that, the product itself, the product listing itself, has already gone copper bestseller, and it's probably going to go silver bestseller pretty soon, I think. And it's going to keep going from there. So it's doing very well. And right now you have the 2 great options. Right now, the only thing, if you really want to get the deluxe color hardcover, you're still going to have to wait a little bit longer. But if you wanted any of the other versions of it, and I don't remember, I had a long night last night. I don't remember what the exact prices are right now, but I know that Amazon has had it on sale these last few days. I don't know if it still does. I think it does. So it's normally $44 on Amazon. I think right now it's like $34 the last time I checked. That could be off, but check it out if you want it from Amazon. And in DriveThru, I believe the black and white version is $25 for the soft cover, and I think it's $35 for the for the black and white soft cover, and $35 for the color soft cover. So there you go. Lots of options by which you can get this awesome game, which I'm going to do more videos about. I really wanted to do a video about the Invisible College at some point right now. It was one of the options. I was waiting for the weekend to do a video on that. Another one is I've still got a couple of books that I've been working on reviewing, and I wanted to get those done. But instead, this whole TSR thing has happened. So let me tell you about that. Apparently, you might have seen this because it even made mainstream news on some of like the big nerd news websites and some of the YouTube channels that aren't specifically about gaming, right? Like, oh shit, I don't remember. I'm a little bit hungover, you could say. But anyways, it's been in the mainstream that there have been these announcements that have said, TSR Games is back, right? Because the company, TSR, of course, was the producer of the original Dungeons & Dragons RPG. They eventually went broke. They were bought out by Wizards of the Coast, which was in turn bought out by Hasbro, and so now it's Wizards of the Coast and Hasbro that does D&D. And these news reports were wildly exaggerated because that's not what happened. It's not TSR has suddenly risen from the dead and is now going to take over D&D or something like that, right? It's that the company name of TSR had become available and it has now been purchased by a small group of guys, and that they have as their kind of, in a way, their front man, Ernie Gygax, who is one of the sons of Gary Gygax, right? And who is now, in fact, for promotional reasons of this TSR product, I've seen that in all the recent press releases, he is instead advertising his name as Gary Gygax Jr. because his name's Ernie Gary Gygax, right? In fact, that was also, I think Gary Gygax's first name was actually Ernie too. But anyways, the point is he never used to be Gary Gygax Jr. He was always Ernie Gygax, and now they're calling him Gary Gygax Jr. because the whole thing is one enormous kind of nostalgia scam, right? It's like, it's purely based on, wouldn't it be great to be back in the good old days sort of stuff, right? And so they've got their second version, Gary Gygax, and they're trying to make products that are, or they're claiming that they're going to make products that are going to be in the spirit of TSR and whatnot, right? Basically, Gary Gygax Jr., as he likes to call himself now, and maybe I shouldn't dead name him Ernie Gygax anymore, is he is a guy that has previously lent his name for money, obviously, to several other products, most of which were kind of off, right? There are some that didn't get fulfilled. There are some that just weren't very successful. And he always makes me think, every time I've seen this guy talk, or that I've seen him being kind of used just as a figurehead for somebody else's project, be it an OSR project or some other gaming related project, he really does strike me as kind of the Fredo of the Gygax family, right? Like he's the one that's always putting his foot in it, and it's causing lots of trouble for the new Dawn, which I guess would be Luke Gygax. I don't know. I wasn't in any way excited about the creation of TSR Inc., right, of the new TSR. I think it's basically nostalgia-mongering. It's at best, it's going to be products that are not going to be especially innovative, done by a lot of people who probably have some of whom are going to have obviously big name recognition, like they were hiring Larry Elmore to do some art pieces. There are claims that Jim Ward was involved, though I believe Jim Ward has later said that he's not directly involved with anything to do with TSR. So, it's going to be people, a lot of these people that are just banking on their names and the good old days, right? Which is not my vision of what you want the OSR to do or be. There's basically two schools of thought in the OSR, which is, there are the people that think the OSR is about recreating a nostalgia-filled version of this mythical old school period that was the one real way of gaming, and that this is, the golden age that we have to get back to and recreate, right? And then there's the other school that is all about saying, no, what we want to do, we're not pretending to be the authentic old way of doing things. What we want to do is we want to take the structure, the framework of the old school rules, right, of the original D&D rules, and play around with them and discover new things you can do with them, like to innovate with them, to create new interesting settings and new interesting rules that are matched to those settings, and interesting variants of D&D that push the D&D game itself in crazy new directions that you sometimes might not work, but a lot of the times they actually work, which is the amazing thing, right? There's been so many incredible OSR products, to say nothing of my own, right? Arrows of Indra took the basic rules, modified them into an Indian setting. Lion and Dragon modified it into a medieval authentic setting, which doesn't sound all that impressive, except that really no other version of D&D is actually medieval authentic in any way, right? And it was really it was up in the air whether you could do it, right? Like, you have to scrap the whole magic system. You put in a new one. you alter around the rules for things like blocking and hit points and critical, damage and all that stuff until you get something that is much grittier and much more intense and kind of Games of Thrones like than the original, right? And to say nothing of stuff like Star Adventure, which is space opera, old school, and World of the Last Sun, which is weird fantasy gonzo old school, and The Invisible College, which is a modern day setting OSR RPG. It's still based originally on the old school D&D rules, but they've been modified to do a game set in the modern times where you play modern magicians using magic that has nothing to do with Bansian magic and secret societies and secret agents and all that cool stuff, right? And so this is the OSR I like. Ironically, this second group are probably much more similar to what the original old school was like in the actual good old days than the first group, because the first group are purity mongers, right? They're like the Taliban, right? They want to hold on to what was there in the past and force it to stay exactly the way it is. But in the past, nobody wanted things to stay the way it is. In the past, right from the beginning, everybody was creating new and innovative and fantastic stuff, right? So it was never about, in the past, it wasn't about nostalgia. Nostalgia by definition is a violation of the past, because you never feel nostalgic for when you're actually there, right? So nostalgia itself becomes a false reality of perspective of the past. And you have to eliminate that and look at, well, what was really great about the past? It wasn't just that it was in the past. It was what were we doing in the past? And the exciting thing about the original old school era was all the new crazy things that were being invented for the first time, and this sense of openness that anything was possible, right? Okay, so that's my problem with TSR. Now, I probably wouldn't have bothered making a video about it. I made some of these comments in the last episode of Inappropriate Characters when we were interviewing Bruce Hurd, or was it, I don't know if it was out or the one 2 weeks earlier where we were interviewing Jim Ward, because we just happened to do two interviews of two very big old school guys right in a row, 2 weeks in a row. So I'm not sure which of the two it was, but if you haven't watched either of those interviews or both of them, you should go check them out because they're really exciting and interesting. But I did make a few comments, like somebody had posted there. They said, "Oh, did you hear the TSR is back?" Right, and they asked for the opinions of these guys on it. Anyway, it wasn't. I probably would. This by itself would not be enough to make an important video about. But as it happens, Gary Gygax Jr. did a YouTube interview that had nothing to do with me, by the way, even though for some reason it seems like certain SJWs online are desperately trying to associate that with me. I never even invited, I wouldn't invite Ernie to an interview, but he did one with somebody else. I don't even know who. And, but I don't remember who, but I did actually watch the video of the interview, because the outrage that you saw on Twitter about it made it sound like he'd, where they said, oh, his transphobic comments, and it sounded like he probably ranted for an hour and a half about the transgender agenda or something, or that he suggested that, I don't know, that people who are transgender should be locked in psychiatric institutions or something like that, right? Like crazy, something really crazy. And I wanted to know what it was, what crazy stupid thing Ernie Gygax said, what came out of his mouth that infuriated these people so terribly, right? And I went to the video, and this video is I think it was 90 minutes long, right? It wasn't a short video. And the whole thing, the one comment that they have now used to cause this torrent of outrage all across Twitter about the new TSR and Gary Gygax Jr. was literally 1 second, a 1 second statement that he said, where he was talking, it's 37 minutes into the video, and he's talking about how, he wants his games are, and TSR is going to be making stuff maybe for people that are more traditional into whatever, kind of games, and, aren't really interested in gender identity. And that was it. That was all he said, right? So he said the words gender identity and sort of implied that that's not interesting. And that is what makes him the new Hitler. Because if you look at Twitter, if you do a search for TSR on Twitter right now, it is very clear that as far as the Pol Pot Maoists of Twitter are concerned, right? The woke grifter SJW garbage of Twitter that infests the D&D hobby. As far as they're concerned, the TSR is now the most evil institution in the world and must be destroyed, right? Like, their outrage levels are just a level of hysteria that usually, you could tell they're really missing Donald Trump, can't you? Like, they're really missing him, because the amount of bile they're spewing at this like tiny comment, right? It wasn't even, I mean, unless I misinterpreted it in some way, there wasn't even a direct rejection or insult. It was just saying, we don't care about that. And that was enough, because of course in this day and age, for the woke left, for the totalitarian left, silence is violence, right? It's not enough for you to stay quiet. God help you if you say the slightest thing against it like Ernie did, but you have to actively endorse all of these things that we are demanding that you claim are true and correct and that we believe in, whether or not some of them are true or correct, or else you're an enemy of the people, an enemy of the cultural revolution, and we will exterminate you, right? That is their agenda. So here I find myself having to laugh my ass off about this and having to comment and having to actually defend that, Ernie Gygax's crime there was just so minimal, right? It was just basically, I watched the whole video, and he was kind of an ass for a lot of it, right? Like, you can tell that he's a guy that just doesn't have a lot of sense of tact or diplomacy, right? He's one of these guys that never knows when it's right or wrong to say things or to say things in a certain way. And he doesn't have that ability to kind of judge the room. But there was nothing there that warranted like when they went the way that they went after TSR. And the funny thing is, the people, whoever it is that's in charge of TSR's Twitter and what have you, who's obviously not Ernie, they I was expecting that they would like freak out or something. I don't know what I was expecting them to do. But they basically made it totally clear that they don't give a two penny crap what the people on Twitter think. And that's interesting, because actually they're probably right. The people on Twitter we know are not their audience. They were never going to buy anything TSR made, right? And we know, in fact, now there was a study that came out very recently that basically it pointed out that there's an outrageous level of left-wing posting going on Twitter that has no reflection on the mainstream reality of America, right? Like, the opinions of people on Twitter, the percentage of opinions that are far left on Twitter, the types of opinions that they have there are things that they are representing at like 75%, 80% support on Twitter, that in the real world has 15% support, right? So what it tells you, if you're a company, is never listen to Twitter, right? Don't make that the hallmark of what you think is popular or not, or what you think is the way people are feeling and thinking, right? Like, Twitter is not a reflection of mainstream views in any way, right? It's a reflection of extremist views of a tiny extremist or group of people that are dominating that one particular social media, because it's a very toxic environment as a social media, and it's also it's an environment that by its nature, because of the little sound bites that Twitter are made of, that causes people to want to be hyperbolic on either side, right? Like, the right wing on Twitter is wackier than normal people are also. Let's point that out, But so if you're a company, that is not a picture for you of what your actual customer base is going to look like, or what they're going to care about, or how they're going to reflect. All right. And obviously, especially so if you're a company like TSR, like you're banking on old school nostalgia of people that basically hate the present and long for this golden age past that they have in their minds. They know, TSR knows that these guys were never going to buy any of their stuff. They're never going to approve of them. They were literally like the ridiculously exaggerated outrage at this tiny comment that Ernie Gygax said proves that right from the beginning, they were just looking for a way to tank this, right? Like to attack this company because for some reason they saw it as a threat. I guess because it just because of name recognition, it made it on some of the more mainstream nerd media. So it caught people's attention, even though they were never going to be producing anything interesting as far as I'm concerned. I was never expecting them to live up to anything. Like the best thing the SJWs could have done is just ignored these guys because they were never going to produce a thing. They're going to maybe get a bunch of money and maybe do some mediocre stuff. You know, they were going to do some crowdfunding of these old school guys that are the class 1 old school guys, the ones that just want to go back to the mythical past. They're going to get their money and maybe produce something, maybe not. And whatever it was going to produce was not going to be in any way groundbreaking. It wasn't going to be a big success, right? But you've actually, the Streisand effect has now obviously caused that they're getting more support, including from people that had no reason to like them. I had no special reason to like them. And now I'm having to say, TSR gets points for being based, right? They get points for recognizing, that there's no reason whatsoever to pander to the SJW left of Twitter, right? They're increasingly irrelevant. They're incredibly powerless. They don't have any actual representation in the large mass of radical normals that are most of America, right? And their agendas are toxic. So, why bother with them? And, what you could say, and I know that probably based on what I've seen people talking about, the trying to associate like the Jim Ward interview that Inappropriate Characters did with this, even though Jim Ward, I do not believe, I think he himself said he's not actually employed in any way with TSR. But the people that are trying to make this these connections obviously watch everything I make. They watch Inappropriate Characters, all that stuff, which is really funny because the amount that I am a vital part of their lives is so disproportionate to how not a part of my lives they are. Like the thing we have in common is that I wake up and every morning I probably do a check on my own name, and they wake up and every morning and they probably do a check on RPGPundit, because they want to obsessively watch everything I do, and I never watch anything they do. This is the difference. Because they're irrelevant to me mostly, except when there's something I can talk about and present on my channel. But I don't need to look at them. I don't need to copiously study everything they do to try to find some way to attack them, because I've got people that'll do that. Like they'll if they say something stupid enough, it'll pass around the OSR, and somebody might message me directly about it. Then I'll take a look at that specific thing. But these guys spend all their time every day. They're looking at me. They're listening to me. They're reading me. They're, whatever. They're obsessed. So I know you guys are watching right now. And here's the thing, TSR, it's not for you. It's not about you, right? Like you've said that many times to other people, right? So here it is. This isn't for you. If you don't like this TSR, you can go and make something else. Right, but this isn't for you. It's for these guys, for these militant normals from Wisconsin. And you have to accept that not everything is about you, SJWs. Not everything has to be about your agenda. I'm sorry. That's just the way it is. And it's very clear that that's how it's going to be more so in the future, because people are getting more and more sick of you. Militant normals in particular are getting more and more sick of you. You're seeing this in every school board meeting all across the United States. And you're seeing this on the internet, and you're seeing that more and more companies are realizing that they probably should stop taking your advice, because every time they do, it makes it worse for them, and you're never satisfied anyways. So why should anyone listen to you? Of course, everybody's going to listen to me, though. That's everything for today. If you like this video, please share it. Share it wherever you think anyone will be interested. And of course, share it to, share it where you think it'll piss people off. Though probably the people that would be most pissed off about this are looking it up for themselves, as I've just pointed out. But share it anyways. And be sure to subscribe if you haven't subscribed yet, and like this video. I appreciate all of my viewers, even the ones that are from the SJW camp they're giving me views anyways, so that's nice. And if you want to support me, you can throw cash directly at me by Patreon or PayPal. There are links in the description if you really want to do that. But what I would very strongly recommend to you is that if you want to support me and get something for yourself in the same process, right? Support me not just in my videoing on YouTube and my posting on social media and my campaigning for free speech and against these people that want to do Cambodia 2.0 on our civilization. If you don't want that, right, then you want to support not just that but also my gaming products, then pick up my books. Check out Lion and Dragon, Dark Albion, Cults of Chaos, great book, probably the one I'm most proud of. The Invisible College, which I'm also very proud of, brand new book, brand new OSR, really crazy. If you want an occult modern game that is nothing like any of the occult modern games that have been out so far, it's not a Cthulhu thing, it's not like Mage the Ascension. And I guess the closest thing it might be connected to would be something like GURPS Illuminati, but except it's not, and it's based on kind of everything in it is in some way inspired by real either historical or present day events in the history of Western occultism. So you're going to see a lot of neat stuff in there. It's a 432 page book, so check that out. Check out Star Adventure, my space opera game. World of the Last Sun, my weird gonzo fantasy game. And if you don't have a lot of money, if you don't have 35 or 25 bucks to buy Invisible College, check out the RPGPundit Presents PDF series. There's 105 issues there. You're gonna find stuff you can use in your OSR game. It's all the stuff I make is fully OSR compatible, so which means you can use it with pretty much any edition of D&D with very little difficulties. And then you can also even use it for other fantasy games with some modifications, right? And there's tons and tons and tons of these products that bring interesting stuff, source material, adventures, monsters, campaign mini settings, all kinds of stuff, weird items, weird creatures. There's everything ranging from hardcore medieval authentic all the way to really wacky weird fantasy. And they all cost between 99 cents to $4.99. And so it's like you're buying me a coffee, but you're also getting something for yourself. And I appreciate it very much to everyone who does. Everyone who's bought the Invisible College and said so many nice things about it, except for Amazon's inadequate level of shipping protection. Other than that, I don't know. Apparently some people have had their Amazon version of the Invisible College arrive a little bit dinged up. And the overall opinion that I've heard is that the protective wrapping is not enough for a book of that size. So I guess, if that does happen to you, obviously, I'm very sorry, but it's not our fault. But you really need to get in contact with Amazon and tell them this, because we want them to change that, right? We don't want that to repeat itself, and then maybe they'll try to fix it for you too in some way. So don't just accept it, Get back to them. Don't please don't get mad at me about it, because it's certainly not or my publisher. It's not my publisher's fault. It's an Amazon shipping thing. But yeah, so many of you have said so many nice things, and thank you so much for that about the Invisible College. It's doing really well, and be sure to check that out. Be sure to check out any of my products, and mainly be sure to keep on watching and sharing these videos. Thank you so much. Currently smoking Dunhill Amber Root Bulldog plus Argento Natural.